Hi, welcome to this episode of Gab and Dad Film Reviews. I'm Gab.
And I'm Dad, in case you had any doubt.
He's my dad.
Her dad.
And we love to go to movies together, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. We thought it would be fun for the world out there to share in our experiences, our opinions, our agreements and disagreements about the films we see together.
The point being that we're obviously two different generations, and do people from different generations see and appreciate movies differently? Perhaps sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Inspired by?
Inspired by the real geezers. Marcia, Nassatir, and Lorenzo, two octogenarians from California in the film business for a long time, and they publish or broadcast on YouTube their movie reviews. www.realgeezers, that's R-E-E-L geezers, one word, .com. Take a look at it. They're worth seeing.
But first watch us, and we're going to talk about I Love You Man. I want to see this film because of the cast and because it's from that whole oeuvre, like the Judd Apatow bunch of films that have been coming out lately and are very entertaining and have really tapped into a lot of themes and laughs, certainly for people around at my age, so I sort of dragged Dad to it.
I wasn't as enthusiastic because this movie, as I saw it, was about young people, living in California who were kind of cool and do cool things. And,
he couldn't relate.
And I can relate to that. So I went under protest.
But he went, and I think enjoyed. I heard you laughing.
I did enjoy it.
It was funny.
I was surprised by this movie. First of all, it's entertaining. It's funny, in some places very funny. And although, in a sense, it's a kind of a light film with not a great deal of substance, there's a surprising sensitivity and a surprising amount of nuance in its depiction of friendship, because that's what this movie is really about. It's about friendship, and in particular, it's about the friendship between two men. Very briefly, Paul Rudd, who plays the central character, gets engaged, and he suddenly realized he doesn't have a best friend or any friend who could be his best man. So he decides to remedy that. And the film is about his exploration of male friendship and his attempt to make a friend with somebody. And there's a lot of barfing. And the central character, or the person who becomes his friend, is played very convincingly by Jason Segel.
Yeah, great performances and writing. So it's a subtle, it's a naturalistic approach, which brings you in and allows you to really to think about the underlying theme or themes, which are quite deep. Friendship and whatnot. I mean, it's called a bromance. My generation and current pop culture reference is the terminology bromance, the friendship or relationship between two heterosexual men who like to hang together. And so I guess the first point of concern or question would be, were you familiar with the whole bromance philosophy?
No, not really. In fact, I think I never heard the word bromance until it came up.
Didn't come up at Oxford?
No, it didn't come up at Oxford. But what interested me in general terms about this film was, as I say, the nature of a male friendship, which I think may have changed a lot over the years, certainly changed from when I was the age of the characters depicted in the film. My experience, and I think a long time ago, my experience and the experience of a lot of my contemporaries when it comes to male friendship is that you can have a close male friend, you can have affection between the two of you, you can see each other quite a lot, but there was always a certain kind of lack of intimacy perhaps. There were some things you didn't talk about, in contrast perhaps to the friendships between women where everything was fair game, you talked about anything. At least that was my perception, that was my suspicion, I suppose. So I was interested in this modern depiction of male friendship, which seemed to me actually in many ways to be more appealing and more attractive than the old-fashioned kind of male friendship that was prevalent in my generation.
Well, it is definitely a more open-minded approach, the whole men seeking that kind of, even to acknowledge that they need to seek that kind of companionship and everything that comes along with that, personalities getting along and being able to talk on a deeper level and all that sort of thing, I'm sure is a much more modern sensibility.
Although there was an interesting thing about this character, the Paul Rudd character in the film, as he starts trying to become, friends with men, which he wasn't really before, he starts to change, his personality starts to change to some degree. He takes on some of the trappings of maledom that he didn't have before, somewhat to the consternation of his fiancée, because he's changing in front of her very eyes.
I don't know if
doesn't
change is fair to say.
Maybe not change.
Things are brought forth that had sort of been suppressed or hadn't been explored because he hadn't had the opportunity till he met this guy, which I think that's very relatable. I mean, anytime you form a friendship with a new kind of person, be it a romantic relationship or a friendship, or
take on some of the coloration,
or become a parent or whatever, you don't change, but elements of you come out, and the ratios may differ.
You take on some of the coloration of these people. You may, if you admire them or you like them a lot, you may imitate them to some extent. You may do some of the things that they do. You may do some things that previously you thought you weren't interested in, and discover that in fact you are interested in it.
Like slapping the bass.
Like slapping the bass. So you need to explain.
That's just an
slapping the bass.
ongoing thing in the film where Paul Rudd remembers that he used to play bass, and his new buddy Jason Segel likes to play guitar.
And they're great fans of the rock group Rush.
Are you familiar with Rush?
No, I'm not.
No, I don't think so.
No.
So there are actually quite a lot of things in this movie that you wouldn't say you were familiar with, but I mean, you felt like you could go along with it. It wasn't a problem.
No, I didn't think it was a problem, and I found, as I say, the movie quite charming. I found the acting very good, including the acting of lesser figures. There was a strong ensemble of actors, all of whom did their thing very well, some of whom you may recognize from Saturday Night Live or Jon Stewart's
Even though
Daily
Dad
Show.
had to look up some of the names on the internet.
Thank God for Google.
That's where the generation gap comes back in.
But a charming movie, not perfect, was a bit too long, I think, like many movies these days.
But he needs his nap.
There's enough of that. It dragged a bit. It dragged a bit occasionally, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was entertaining, and just a little bit more than just entertaining. There was some important themes that were explored quite well. So I would recommend it, even to somebody as ancient as I am, although I don't want to make too much of that.
No, of course not. And I would recommend it to anyone myself, including going to see it with someone of the other generation. Just keep in mind the references to blowjobs and some barf.
So don't go with your granny.
And Google Rush before you go.
So there you go.